monitoring your grades, I'm going to crack down, you're not going to have access to your, you're only going to be able to use the car to go this many places, we're cracking down. And I said, no, I'm leaving. I gave up my relationship with my family, I gave up my car, I gave up my cell phone, I gave up a place to live, and I gave up, my dad buying me groceries, all of that, to go use drugs. I put myself in a circle of friends that sort of encouraged my use. I can't diagnose anyone as an addict, but I will say they definitely have addictive behaviors, and we were all using together every single day. I found a group of friends that validated my behavior in that way. So I dropped out of school. I got an apartment, but I was quickly evicted. They let me live there about 3 months, but I did not pay a single month's rent on that apartment. I spent it all on drugs. This is not at all what my parents were teaching me to do. I started stealing from my family. My mother caught me sneaking into her house when she wasn't there. I still had a key at that point, stealing jewelry and DVDs. I thank God today that she did catch me. I wasn't able to pawn that stuff for money, for drugs. I told her at the time that it was for food, but we both knew that it was for drugs. I even staged a mugging. I had borrowed money from my dad. He lent me a couple $100s. And I got my boyfriend at the time to punch me in the face and give me a black eye so that I could say that I was mugged and on the street and couldn't get that money back. I would literally have rather gotten punched in the face than take a break from my using drugs. I moved to Richmond soon after that, where the drugs were more plentiful, the party was constantly going on, and I didn't have to stop or feel bad about my use because I was constantly around people that were doing the same thing as me. In Richmond, the big city, it's wild up there. It really is. And I was wasting away. I was very, very thin. I've always been sort of like thicker, but I was very, very thin. My hair was falling out. I just looked sick. I thought I looked great, but I looked very sick. I wouldn't call my family for weeks at a time. They were so worried. My mom would lay awake night after night after night, wondering if she was going to get the call that I was dead. And none of that stopped me. So I continued to start crossing lines that I would lay for myself. I would draw a line in the sand. I would say, okay, I'm using this substance, but I'll never go on and use these hard drugs. And I crossed that line. Okay, I'm using these drugs, but I'll never sell to support my habit. And I crossed that line. Okay, I'm selling to support my habit, but I'll never sleep with anyone for drugs. And I crossed that line too. Soon, I even was getting drugs shipped in off the black market. Did you know that you can get drugs mailed in? You can. My mom, eventually, this was in 2015, my mom came to come pick me up from Richmond. I was in a state of psychosis. They diagnosed me at Carilion with drug-induced psychosis, and I stayed in the mental hospital there for about a week to detox. They convinced me to go to rehab, where I learned a lot about addiction. I learned a lot about how it is a disease, and it is a disease. And I said, okay, I see now. I've got all these things, I did all these things wrong. I was so remorseful. It was like something in me snapped. I said, okay, I'm never gonna use again. But I went into a sober living here in Roanoke, and it didn't take long for me to get lonely, start hanging out with my old group of friends again. I would go out to bars and drink. I thought, I can handle that, just a couple beers. And I was off to the races again, back using every single day. I hid it from people for a while, but it wasn't long until my life became once again unmanageable. I got close to losing my job. I was about to lose my place to live. You can't live there if you're using drugs. And so I met a guy who said, I can support you. You just come and you live with me. We'll live in a tent. We'll live together, and I can support you, I can help you. That relationship, I basically ran away with a total stranger. It's not something I would ever do in my right mind. That relationship became violent and abusive. I left him a couple months later. And still, I was afraid to reach out to my parents, afraid that they would throw me back in rehab. That was the number one thing I was concerned with. I was beaten down, battered, and still, I didn't want to get help from them because I didn't want anyone to take away my drugs. So this is where I hit rock bottom. I moved back to Richmond. I was walking around the streets of Richmond, no job, no home, no money. What little money I did have, I spent on drugs and alcohol, not food, not a place to live. And I found myself here, and I said, how did I get here? I thought back to all the teachers and the parents saying, what are you going to do with your life? You're so special. We know that you're going to do something great. And here I was on the street. I thank God I only had to sleep outside one time. I slept on a bench. Finally, after I came back to Roanoke, but I was admitted, I couldn't stop using. I was admitted into the hospital once again, second time in a year, for drug-induced psychosis. Stayed at Lewis Gale this time for about a week. And I found out about the program at the rescue mission. And then my life really changed. After I'd hit that rock bottom, I knew I need a long-term recovery. It didn't work just to go to a 30-day rehab and get me back out where I could make my own choices. I needed a safe place to get myself together. Because this may be a physical problem, but it has a spiritual solution. I needed to get emotionally and spiritually well if I was going to maintain long-term recovery. So the rescue mission has been a lifesaver for me. I've met wonderful friends there. I have great counselors. I go to 12-step meetings, and I'm gaining a network there. And so, if I can leave you with a little bit of hope today, it's that recovery is possible. It's hard to know what the solution is because for every addict, they themselves, no one could shake me and say, wake up, you need to change. I had to make that decision for myself. So if today we can prevent addiction from starting, that would be the best option. But if you find that there, someone you love or yourself, your life is unmanageable and out of control with drugs, there are resources to help. And so I thank you all for listening to my story, and I thank you for letting me be here tonight.